legends, Sunday morning, how good. Hopefully all of you enjoyed your super hectic long runs this morning. I just got on the bike and did 50 Ks, nice and easy, just slowly building up the weekly training volume. It's going well, super psyched. Now, I don't really get a lot of hate, but if I do, generally there's going to be a little nugget of truth in there that can help me to improve as a person and as a presenter of information and things like that. And sometimes I do get things wrong. And this person called me out and said, the thing that you were promoting was probably borderline too much and maybe is the reason why I could get injured from it. And I fully understand. So I made a video many months ago, probably this time last year, talking about the base building program that I was doing to try and get myself as fit as possible. And I got injured. And so this person's basically saying that what I did probably was just too much when I was doing threshold Tuesday and Thursday and then doing some hills on the weekend. And you know, in all fairness, I actually would agree at this point. I think that I don't actually need to do that much intensity, and most people don't, during a base building phase to build a massive aerobic base to build off. I actually think that people can do a lot less with their time, and that's because now, a year later, being on YouTube and constantly trying to learn, I've now understood certain new things that I didn't really understand before, like the minimum effective dose of training and the maximum tolerable dose of training. That's what we're going to talk about today when I get home, but I just got to go get some grapes because I'm fucking starving. All right, let's break this down. And also, let me know what kind of fruit you like to snack on in the comment section below. So let's talk about training stress, because that's all your body really cares about. It doesn't know pace, doesn't know anything like that. All it knows is how much stress you're putting on the body. So imagine we have stress on this y-axis, and we can very easily create a minimum effective dose. Anything at this line or below in terms of the stress that it puts on the body is going to be minimally effective. So below that line, there's going to be no effect on your fitness overall because there's just not enough stress to create adaptations. And then at that line is the minimum amount that you have to do to create some sort of stress on the body to actually adapt to. Now the question is, how do we find the minimum effective dose? Well, what you have to do is look at your training history, but also look at the programming that you actually do. The next thing to do is to regularly test your fitness over time to make sure that what you're doing is effective. And if you put that in line with how you're actually feeling and your overall, fatigue levels and stuff, you can kind of start to find the minimum effective dose of your training. So what you can do is 3 weeks of very conservative training, do a fitness test, and then do that same block again, and then do a fitness test. And if you are improving, then that is more than likely going to be your minimum effective dose. Now, what most people do is they progress way too quickly. What I would say is that you can stick at this minimum effective dose for a long period of time and make lots of continuous adaptations for a long time, especially if you're fairly new to running or endurance sports in general. Like, you could probably do the same training program over and over and over for like an entire year and continually improve in your fitness tests and stuff like that. And so interestingly, what we will find is that the minimum effective dose over time starts to slowly creep up as you continue to do training blocks, which means that your training has to increase in volume and intensity at some point. Maybe though, you have to be a little bit more conservative to make sure that minimum effective dose is starting to creep up rather than ramping it up too quick and going from the low side of the stress on the body to the high side, because the high side is where all the risk takes place. For example, a year ago, 100 Ks a week would have been my minimum effective dose to get some sort of adaptations because I was highly trained. And so if I were to do 100 Ks a week this week, I would be in the non-effective training zone, just like if I run 10Ks a week. I would get the most amount of benefit out of just doing 30Ks a week for the next 5 weeks, because that would be the minimum. There would be no risk to it, and I would get lots of adaptations from it. Does that make sense? Now, this high side is the maximum effective dose. So at this line, if you go above that, your training is going to go back to being non-effective, because you're just going to be stressing your body too much to actually be able to adapt to. Okay, stress on the body breaks the body down, and you have to recover from that to actually get the benefits from the training. So if you enter this zone, your training goes back to being basically pointless. You may as well just have underdone it with the minimum effective dose and being absolutely fine. So we want to stay in this middle blue zone where everything is effective that we're doing. Another thing to think about is that stress is not just physical stress. There's also mental stress. There's also your job, your kids, if you have them, you know, the bills that you have to pay, all of that stressful life stuff. It still adds up on this same scale of stress. So you have to make sure that in life you're allowing for that and, you know, periodizing your year so that some parts of the year, when you have race preparations, for example, that you're taking as much stress away as you can from everything else in your life. Vice versa, sometimes you're going to have periods in your year where you need to drop your training back to do other things in your life that are slightly more important. You know, life is all about seasons, and so is running. You have to periodize your year, focus on a particular season, and not completely run yourself into the ground. So to effectively utilize something like this, you have to be an expert on your own physiology, how you respond to certain training stimulus from your training history, what kind of things are your strengths and your weaknesses, and what kind of things you can work on to improve this minimum effective dose. Like for example, if your strength right now is threshold training and you do lots of threshold training, you can't just continuously add more and more and more threshold each week, because it's going to not actually give you any effective dose. But this is a very simple video today. I just wanted to establish this kind of framework in the way that I've been thinking recently, and maybe I wasn't thinking like that a year ago, but I definitely am now, and I understand that doing too much and, you know, just getting enough stress in the body, you know, they're both really valuable concepts to understand in your own physiology. And I now understand how I feel when I go overboard, and how I feel when, you know, I'm not doing quite enough training to get any kind of stress response. Really interesting. Be an expert of your own physiology. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.